All right, halftime now. ED's unions going full throttle. Reports that unions are spending 4 times more than we originally thought. They're trying to sway folks at the polls, even far from the polls. In all, unions coughing up more than $3 billion, that is billion with a B, to elect their candidates and get their way. Problem is they have not elected a lot of their candidates, and they've not remotely gotten their way. Coming up short in Wisconsin, where Governor Walker remains, and failing in cities like San Jose and San Diego, California, where the crackdown on public spending has won overwhelming voter support. Even union-friendly governors like Andrew Cuomo in New York are not quite so friendly, or sympathetic Democratic governors like LA's Antonio Villaraigosa are quite so sympathetic. They're calling for big cuts from unions, which has a lot of members wondering whether all their dues are being wasted by unions. Let's just say the batting average, well, it ain't good. And paying billions of dollars for that batting average ain't looking too wise. So I suspect that the news today that unions are spending a lot more than we thought ain't sitting well with as many rank-and-file union members who ain't liking what they see. They have reason to be leery. Half into this year, they're getting fully throttled by their own union bosses who ain't exactly getting a lot of bang for their bucks. And Hadley Heath of the Women's Forum says that alone should have union members breaking ranks and sycophantic politicians breaking ties. I'm not holding my breath for either development right now, Hadley, but you make a compelling case that the union bosses certainly have not had a compelling performance. Where do you think this is going?
Well, what's interesting about this analysis from the Wall Street Journal out today showing that unions have spent $4.4 billion between 2005 and 2011 on political activity is that this analysis tries to encompass more different types of spending on political activity. So not just lobbying political ads, but also the mobilization of union workers themselves, because that's really been where a lot of unions' influence has been in politics. So persuading their own members to vote a certain way on a campaign, or even paying them to participate in political protests. So this has been a wide and deep type of influence that unions still have on our politics today, even though unionized workers are actually a declining part of the workforce.
Yeah, you know, a lot of them still, I think, that is union members that they might feel, okay, I can grimace and bear it if I'm getting something from it, if I'm seeing some tangible results. For example, if they had helped succeed in toppling Governor Walker or going after political leaders effectively, trying to rein in this case, public pensions, public health care, et cetera. But despite spending billions to do so over the years, they really haven't done that. And so if I'm a union member, I'm thinking, well, I don't know if we should be pouring good money after bad here, right?
Definitely. It's got to be frustrating for a lot of union workers who in many states today still don't have the option of not joining a union. Union participation is mandatory in a lot of states, and then after those dues, union dues are taken out of their paycheck, those workers have little to no control over what happens, what type of political activity they're funding, and in many cases, those campaigns or those issues may not be things that the union workers themselves support. So it's the money at the top that's the big labor bosses making those decisions in spite of the interests of those workers.
You know, Hadley, when I was in Wisconsin for the recall vote, one of the provisions that had already gone well into effect there, and then one of the reasons why public unions were so interested in taking down Governor Scott Walker, was this option that those who worked in, you know, teachers or what have you, in union-concentrated industries could opt out. In other words, they could look at the thousands they're paying, or some of them as few as, you know, a few $100s a year, and opt out and not pay it. And thousands had done so to date. When I was there, God knows how many more since. And that is what scares union leaders, right? They've given the choice. Their own members give them the finger.
Sure. Well, when right-to-work legislation is introduced in a state, typically what we see is about a 15% on average decline in union membership in those states. So it's pretty clear that a lot of workers would choose not to be in a union if that was an option for them. So that right there should tell us. In fact, only about 70% of union workers vote the way that their leadership wants them to do so in those political campaigns, in general elections. So that right there should be evidence that the union bosses aren't able to control their union workers' vote, even though they're able to control the direction of those dues and political activities.
So why are a lot of it, largely, not across the board, but largely Democratic politicians so scared of unions and so scared of ticking them off?
Well, whenever we talk about union giving or donations from unions to political campaigns, we also tend to talk about corporate political action committees too. And people believe there's this general idea that these two things are a counterweight to each other in our society. But if we look back at 2008, actually corporate PACs gave about 55% of their donations to the Democratic Party and about 45% to Republicans. That's a generally even split there, but when you look at union donations to campaigns, 92% of them went to candidates in the Democratic Party. So clearly this is a concern for Democrats. They like that unions are able to take dues from workers and use them as the union bosses would choose. And oftentimes we see that there's this cycle between unions. They may support a certain candidate. When that candidate is in office, they turn around. It's like a I scratch your back, you scratch mine. They end up getting a waiver from Obamacare, or they get some kind of special deal, special treatment from the government.
Amazing, amazing. Hadley, thank you very much. Hadley Heath in Washington, Independent Women's Forum. All right, well, it is not just Arizona. Why that